So can a tenant in negotiation ever ask, say, hey, we don't have money, we want to give you equity in our company? Does that come up a lot?
That came up in the early 90s when I was working for ProLogis and some other, companies.
Tell me a story there.
No, I just know that that's been a discussion. It's not something that they would always do.
Okay.
But potentially that came up quite a bit, you know.
Does that happen now, though? You said back in the .com time, but
right.
yeah.
I think landlords are a little more cautious because they were, they could have been burned in the past with a lot of that.
Yeah.
And they may have new guidelines too that's not really their core business, so they should just be doing what they're supposed to be doing and not investing necessarily in their tenant's business. But I know that some do.
So there's some, you got to understand, there's some that are smaller landlords that may take a risk. They're big landlords, like institutional guys that have multiple tenants in their office building. That probably is not going to happen.
Right.
Okay, interesting. So some of our viewers are overseas in countries such as China and Korea, all over the world. How is it different for them when they come to Silicon Valley? What questions should they be asking? I mean, they don't have a U.S. credit history. They may not have a credit history at all, depending on where they're from. How did they go about finding a location?
Well, they partner up with folks like us who can help identify where they would like to be, and this is after we find out more about them and more details about them. But I have a group I'm working with right now, and it's just investigation as you go, day by day. Because sometimes you're dealing with them on a whole different time frame. Like I'm having conference calls at 9 o'clock at night, which is like their morning, or you know. So you just try to accommodate and figure out what they're looking for, and when they're here, ask them as many questions as you possibly can on how are you established already? Are you a California corporation? Have you incorporated yet? What's the process that you're going about right now in terms of how you're going to finance this operation? And
so if I'm a company from, we'll say Ukraine, from Unit City, from Matt's area, who was a guest earlier, and I come to Silicon Valley, from day one, I found a location. How long does it take from when I decide the location or when I connect with you to start looking for a location, to sign a lease, to be able to move in? Like, can this be done in a month, or is it a lot longer, a lot shorter?
Yeah, I don't think a month will do it, in my opinion, depending on how ready the company is overseas.
Okay.
Because I work with a lot of companies overseas that just not aware of what the due diligence requirements from a landlord to a tenant are.
Okay.
And a lot of landlords, since you're coming from overseas, that level of trust is not as strong as a local company.
And it takes them time because they're traveling back and forth, and when they're here they're seeing things, but then they go back and then they're reporting their directors, and then maybe those folks need to come out and see the property, and there's a lot of back and forth that initially could happen in the first 2 to 3 months of helping this client even identify space.
So you'd recommend an overseas founder, one of the people on his team, to come to Silicon Valley, meet a broker, build that relationship on maybe trip 1. Trip 2, come see a few locations. Trip number 3, kind of make the decision, and then trip 4. I mean, is that a normal process?
That's pretty normal. Yeah, and I would say anywhere from 2 to 6 months. But it depends how large of a company you're dealing with too. And sometimes you can find a space immediately if it's, maybe if it's a smaller like space and you've got
A-round company, 10 employees, 20 employees.
Yeah, and you've got plenty of options. It may not take too long. You get into some bigger size requirements, and then you want to give yourself a longer window.
Do anyone from overseas come here with completely off the wall expectations? I want this office, I'll pay this much, and you go, I'm sorry, that's the price of a chair. Do you ever come across that?
I do. I mean, like, it's not way off, but it's more like, they send somebody else that's not really in the real estate or tenant the space acquisition environment. They may send somebody from marketing or something, and they may not know what the landlord is expecting or how to work with a broker. So there's a lot of back and forth, and we try to help them prepare by telling them that we need access, or the landlord needs to look at your financials and your business plan and that sort of thing. And so they have to be ready to provide that kind of material.
Is there any vocabulary they should know, price per square foot or things like that if they know before meeting you, could save a lot of time?
Well, you know, a lot of time we're educating them on these buzzwords like TI.
What's
you know,
TI?
tenant improvement. And
Okay.
sometimes we just say, you know, what kind of TIs are you looking for? And they don't know. It's a tenant improvement.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's important because one client of mine wanted a lab within their part of their R&D operation.
Wow.
So then I was asking them about the kind of power that they might be, you know, power needs that they might have, and he wasn't so sure about that. So that's pretty critical, because if you're going to have a lab component, you may need 200 to 400 amps of power in your space. So it's important, because then now he'll go back and ask the key questions that he needs to be able to.
Do you ever
know.
give potential tenants a list of questions and just say,
Yes.
answer all these before the next time we talk?
Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
What advice would you give a founder out there that hasn't found any office space yet, that's still working at home, on when they first talk to landlords, or what they should be thinking of, other than what we've already talked about so far? We've talked about location of your employees, we've talked about transportation, we've talked about lease options, we've talked about talking to brokers who can make introductions, and this is all amazing. What's more to know?
Another thing that I like to do is recommend a good business attorney,
Oh,
because, as you know, we're here to help with this lease process from start to finish. But when you get into the business points of the lease agreement on what you've negotiated in terms, there's also the boilerplate language within the lease. And if you're a foreign company here, or you're not really familiar with a lot of lease language,
okay.
I highly advise that they use business attorneys to review this documentation, because we're not attorneys.
Yeah.
You know, we help negotiate these deals, but to protect them, that's just an important part. Do you have a business attorney? Do you need a reference to a good local real estate attorney?
Have you seen anyone that, because they didn't have an attorney, got in some hot water later on?
Not too much hot water, but
Not really hot water,
Not
but
water,
it's just something that they, you know, it's not easy language for them to review on their own.
yeah.
Okay.
And so they should have a second pair of eyes to take a look at that and what their needs are.
And Carlos, what advice would you give to a founder before you met them? You know, any information you wish to pass on to someone?
As far as leases are concerned, it's mostly to think about the strategic location where they want to be, and if it fits their needs. I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, I think that a lot of them may think that they need a certain thing, but a lot of times it's better for them to be in a shared environment, or maybe find somebody that has a complementary type of business with them that they can go in together. That might provide some synergy to them, and you can make those kind of introductions as well.
That's great. And Mary, before time runs out, could you
Yes.
please talk about how people can contact you, and a little brief overview of yourself one more time?
Sure. So again, Mary Blazer. I'm with Newmark Knight Frank, and folks can reach me at my email, which is mblazer@ngkf.com. We have our company website, www.ngkf.com, as well.
Carlos?
Carlos Serrano Kwan. My number is 415-608-8409, and we have dedicated tenant representation agents in my firm. So
That's great. So Mary, Carlos, I want to thank you guys for taking the time, coming here on Silicon Valley Successes. And people at home, for further information, please visit our website, siliconvalleysuccesses.com. Check us out on YouTube, Facebook, and all the other social mediums. And we hope that you got a lot out of this. And in the future, we're going to have more guests from investment bankers, bookkeepers. We have some amazing founders coming up in the next few episodes. So we look forward to your future attendance. And thank you again for taking the time to watch.
Thank you from all of us at Silicon Valley Successes. We hope you found the information presented today useful in your path to success. For further information on accessing the resources in Silicon Valley, you may visit us on the web at siliconvalleysuccesses.com, on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you. And remember, we want to help you in your journey to become the next success.